Greetings, mortals! Welcome to another session of the Infernal Court in Musical Hell. I'm Diva, your judge, jury, executioner, and evil orphanage matron. I get the feeling that Annie is a musical that's loved more for sentimental reasons than for its actual quality. Don't get me wrong, it's not a bad musical, a little saccharine for my tastes, but it has a decent score, a fun villainess, and while there are certainly better shows out there, there's plenty that are far worse. But being a lighthearted, family-friendly piece with a child protagonist, it's probably the first live-action musical a lot of people saw, either on stage or on film, and that makes it hold a special place in many hearts. And that's okay, I definitely get the nostalgia factor. I'm just trying to explain why this serviceable but not spectacular show has been filmed no less than 3 times. A 1982 movie that didn't turn out too well, a 1999 made-for-TV film that was quite a bit better, and oh sweet Lucifer, our next offender, the 2014 reboot featuring Jamie Foxx and Quvenzhané Wallis. Now, before we begin, I would like to make one thing absolutely and inescapably clear. There is nothing wrong with casting a black girl as Annie. None. Nada. Null point. In the first place, the comic strip on which the musical is based ended its run several years before this Annie came to the big screen, so the kids who are the target demographic are unlikely to know the difference or care. Second, it's been pointed out that the original Annie, with her red hair and spirited personality, was strongly hinted to be Irish, who themselves were an often marginalized ethnic minority in the early 20th century. If you're going to do a modern remake of Annie, why not give your title character a race that reflects a similar reality? Or, make her whatever race you want, because this is New York in the 21st century, and it doesn't look like an Osmond family photo album. So if you're watching this case trying to find some justification for your bullshit ingrained prejudices, go somewhere else because I am not judging this movie by the color of its skin but by the content of its character, and believe me, I will have more than enough to talk about on that count. Do we understand each other? Good. Then let's examine the case of Annie, 2014.
So we can all learn from William Henry Harrison to wear our coats and wash our hands so we have better immune systems. The end.
And right out of the gate, we have sin number 1, this movie's desperate attempts to look cool. This Annie wants so badly to be up-to-date and modern and relevant to the kids, and it just reeks of trying too hard.
How do you do, fellow kids?
Almost every time there's a reference to the original version, like this cameo by Taylor Richardson, who played the title role in the most recent Broadway revival, it comes with the subtext of, hey, remember that old-fashioned hokey Annie? Well, this Annie is so much better than that, because she's hip and trendy and down with whatever it is the youth of today are down with. That's not going to endear you to the people who are already fans of your work, and it's not going to help you win over new fans either.
There she is, our own little orphan Annie.
Foster kid.
Got that? Because I'm the new Annie for the 21st century. Peace out and for shizzle. Nowhere is this desperation more obvious than in the multiple self-conscious meta-humor references to the fact that this is a musical, which means, gasp and shock, that there will be singing.
Less singing and more cleaning.
You know I'm tired of being the black cat, of running the show down in the snake pit.
And why are they singing?
People love musicals. Bursting into song for no apparent reason, it's magical.
I've seen a lot of musicals that didn't quite know how to handle being a musical, but this is the first one I've seen that is actively embarrassed by it. I feel like if the producers felt they could have gotten away with doing Annie without Tomorrow and A Hard Knock Life and the rest, they would have, because they want so badly for this movie to be cool, but they don't think that musicals can be cool. So they try to compensate by going, yeah, we know, they're singing, how weird is that? Newsflash, it's not. Any more than it's weird for people to speak in iambic pentameter in Shakespeare or get into elaborate fight sequences in an action movie. It's just a convention in the genre. And if the best you can do is a weak lampshading of that fact, you need to try a lot harder. So after we have a good laugh at old Annie showing off, new Annie shows off, which is somehow better, I guess. And after school, she heads across town to hold vigil at an Italian restaurant. See, in addition to her little half-locket orphan trinket, Annie has a note from her parents written on the back of one of the restaurant's receipts, so she goes there every Friday and hopes that they'll show up there again. Of course, her wait proves fruitless, so it's back to the foster home run by the cruel Miss Hannigan.
You think the world wants a smart-mouthed little girl? No, they don't. Or you wouldn't be here. And the only reason you are here is because I get $157 a week from the state, which, believe me, is not worth it.
Ladies and gentlemen, please welcome Cameron Diaz, our sin number 2. Miss Hannigan has never been a subtle character. In fact, she's one of the great nasty, over-the-top bad guy roles. So you would think that there would be no way that you could play her too broad. You would be so terribly, terribly wrong.
No breakfast until this place is spotless.
I hate her so much.
And if you find any loose change over a nickel, it's mine.
And call off Christmas.
It's bad enough that the character gets some of the most desperate laugh damn you, it's funny bits in the movie.
Hey, you little monster! I wasn't done with you! Get back here! I haven't told you how I was almost one of Hootie's blowfish.
But following all this mean, child-hating, comical drunk stuff, the writers make matters worse by trying to give Hannigan a sympathetic backstory. Something about being kicked out of CNC Music Factory right before their big break, and add this whole, oh, she's just jaded because her dreams were crushed and all she needs is a little kindness and to settle for the dogged nice guy bodega owner across the street angle to her. This makes for a very confusing character tone, which is reflected in her villain song, Little Girls. It starts out pretty much the way you remember it, and then the bridge goes off into limbo. I really don't know what we're supposed to get out of this. Are we supposed to be laughing at Miss Hannigan, feeling sorry for her, worrying because she's flailing around on the floor and hallucinating that her furniture is turning into children? The direction doesn't give us a clue, and Diaz's campy performance and indifferent singing don't help matters. Annie is one of a handful of foster girls taken in by Hannigan so she can get money from the state, which is a crummy situation. But hey, at least they have cool string lights on their beds and nightly sing-along sessions.
So maybe now it's time, and maybe when I wake.
Oh, I'm with Pepper on this one. Sin number 3, the score is terribly overproduced. Everything is given these dense, dramatic, you will have the feels orchestrations. Even Maybe, which is this very simple, yearning piece. It makes the songs feel false and calculated. And then, of course, they go in with the auto-tune. All over the place. It's so obtrusive that I don't think I can give you an accurate assessment of Quvenzhané Wallis's singing. She could sound like anything under all that post-production.
But I'm stuck with that day, that's gray and lonely. I just stick out my chin and grin and say.
Poor Jamie Foxx doesn't fare any better.
This is just the start of your story. If you got guts, you get glory.
No, really, why are you auto-tuning Jamie Foxx? He can sing! We've seen Dreamgirls, we know he's up for the challenge. This is another manifestation of the movie's desperation to be cool, how much it weighs the music down with these pop affectations. Despite this, there are a few things that work, such as the cleaning rhythms as the foster girls are forced to tidy the apartment for a government inspection to the tune of Hard Knock Life. All the whistling while you work gets the place spotless in time for some more forced humor.
Okay, showtime. You guys act well cared for.
We love you, Miss Hannigan!
Take it down 1,000. Nobody's gonna believe that.
Cameron, I'd like you to meet the pot. I'm sure you'll have a lot in common. The inspector is so distracted by Hannigan's uncomfortable flirting routine that he drops the form with the girl's personal information on it, which Annie realizes she can use to find information on her parents. So while she sets off on that quest, why don't we meet our Daddy Warbucks character, Will Stacks?
Whoa. I gotta feed the hobos?
Don't say hobos, say bums. Compliment them on the food, but not too
Oh,
much.
I ain't eating this food.
You're gonna eat the food,
I don't
and
eat
you're
no
gonna
hobo
like
food.
it, but you're not gonna love it. Okay?
And And why don't we talk about why Will Stax is sin number 4 while we're at it? In the original musical, Daddy Warbucks was also a bit rough around the edges at first. He was gruff, impersonal, and was only hosting an orphan child as a publicity stunt, but you never got the impression he was really a terrible person. You could see that even though he doesn't know what to do with this perky little girl at first, there was something in him that could learn how. Will Stax is a terrible person, and not in a I understand he has reasons for being the way he is and want him to change for the better way, more like a go die in a fire way. You know you're not in a good place when your male protagonist vomits on a homeless person, and it's the least objectionable thing he does in the entire scene. And let's see in how many other ways is Stax horrid. He's disgusted by the touch of other people, his campaign for mayor of New York is mostly a big ego trip, his cell phone network invades the privacy of pretty much everybody in the city and hides towers and national landmarks, it takes him nearly 2/3 of the movie to show anything even remotely resembling affection for Annie, which makes it much harder to get invested in their relationship. He is responsible for not one, but multiple unfunny spit-take gags.
I bet if I moved in with you, you become president.
You gotta be kidding me.
Part of Stax's issues can be traced to his campaign manager Guy, who speaks entirely in buzzwords and focus group statistics and, if such a thing is possible, is an even more shallow and obvious antagonist than Miss Hannigan, but there's just not enough there to endear him to the audience, or his assistant and prospective love interest, Grace. She mostly acts like she's too smart to hang around the rest of the characters. While the Staxmobile breaks down after the disastrous vomit incident, Annie goes to the city clerk's office for information on her family.
I'd like to get my records, please.
You'll need DOH form number 4380-8 and $43.50.
55 cents.
And this is how desperate the movie's attempts at humor are. The social worker has a thick Russian accent for literally no reason other than to give her a comical accent. That's her one personality trait. Alas, comical accent lady tells Annie that there's no information on her parents, so Annie wanders off sadly and comes across her official designated Sandy being tormented by a couple of tough kids. Attention, attention, meet cute docking in Bay 1. Meet cute landing in 3, 2.
You okay?
Meet cute has landed. I repeat, the meet cute has landed. Saving a kid from getting run over gives Stax a bump in the polls, which Guy wants to exploit by inviting Annie to dinner. Stax doesn't want to have to be nice to a little kid, because, again, terrible person, but he's persuaded, so Grace goes to pick Annie up and to take her to the photo op.
I have a lot of friends, so don't worry about me. I mean, I work a lot, I do, and I could have some more friends, but how many friends do you really need?
Oh, Grace, and I was starting to like you, too. Annie pretty quickly figures out that Stax has ulterior motives, because really, even a blind cavefish could see that, and manages to hustle an extended stay with him by promising all the cute for the camera she can bring. Stax is all, I don't want it because I hate children and I'm a terrible person, and Guy is all, think of the publicity, and Grace is all, am I really the only sane person in this movie? And, inevitably, Annie is whisked away with Grace and comical accent lady to Stax's fabulous high-tech penthouse and sin number 5, I think I'm gonna like it here. In the original musical, this song, which welcomes Annie to her new lifestyle, is an ensemble number performed by Daddy Warbucks' virtual army of servants. This added a human element to the scene. Suddenly, Annie is surrounded by people who are devoted to taking care of her. And yeah, they are being paid to do that, but since the only authority figure in her life has let her down on every conceivable level, that's still a pretty big deal for her. Here, Annie is almost alone in the most sterile technological environment imaginable.
I think I'm gonna like it. I'm sure I'm gonna like it. I think I'm gonna like it here.
This not only makes her newfound joy seem materialistic, but a bit confusing as well. There's nothing in this house that could appeal to a child. In fact, most of it looks like things that she'd be warned to keep her hands off of so she doesn't break them. There are no toys, books, video games, or anything to entertain her. Her bedroom is as impersonal as a high-class hotel suite. It doesn't look like fun, it looks cold and lonely. In fact, that's one of the problems with this entire movie. It's so focused on the stuff. It's primarily interested in the fabulous trappings of Stack's lifestyle and Annie's rags-to-riches situation. The original Annie had stuff too, but it became secondary to the character interactions. Here, it overrides them. Annie gives candy and cell phones to her fellow foster kids, dances around an apartment filled with view screens, starts trending on Twitter. Look, kids, Katy Perry! You like Katy Perry, right? Rides in a helicopter and is so busy with the material side of her new situation that she never really develops the relationship with her benefactor that the story is supposed to focus on. Of course, it's not all new phones and junk food. There's also fancy parties, like the official premiere of this pseudo-Twilight movie called Moonquake Lake.
Things happen for a reason.
Says the boy who doesn't have to go home to the moon every night.
Then don't go.
You know, it's not my choice.
I want to watch that movie instead. Yeah, it looks terrible, but at least it looks terrible in a fun way, unlike this. And after the movie, it's time for more stuff, now with Sia. There's other stuff, like Hannigan being bitter because she doesn't have stuff, and Grace and Stax having sort of flirting but don't want to admit they're attracted stuff, and Guy doing sleazy political campaign stuff, and Grace and Annie doing girl bonding stuff while Annie holds her weekly vigil.
Do you think you'll remember what they look like?
I think I'll just know.
Oh, Annie, don't go down that road. That way leads to having 3 guys show up who might be your father and a bunch of shenanigans that could be easily avoided by a DNA test. Eventually, Stax trots Annie out for a big museum gala, which gives her the opportunity to stop the movie dead with, well, opportunity.
Now look at me and this opportunity is standing right in front of me. One thing I know, it's only part luck and soul.
But it all comes crashing down when Guy tries to get Annie to read a prepared speech for the guests, and the movie goes straight into after-school special territory.
I know I'm not your dad, but I would like to know what's going on with you.
I can't read.
Look, I can go with this basic premise. Annie is an inner-city kid who's been in and out of foster homes and is currently under the care of a comical lush, so yeah, she's probably a bit behind the educational curve. What I don't believe is that she has been able to keep up this pretense for the past 5 years.
I saw you sign your name.
That's all you gotta know how to do.
And what about your teachers? How is this possible?
I'm good at hiding it.
Really? How does she even begin to manage that? Does she convince her teachers to let her take all her tests orally? Does she pretend to be sick every time she's called on to read aloud in class? Does she copy off the other students? Kids in American public schools are standardized tested up the tail. I think this would have probably come up before now. And really, there's no reason for this plot point to exist, apart from throwing another phony layer of sentiment on top of the rest of this shit pile of a film. Stax hires a tutor for Annie, because, you know, that's easier than interacting with her himself, and also reveals his secret poor boy from Queens whose daddy worked all the time and died young backstory in a last-ditch attempt at character development. All of which means Stax has finally started to care for Annie and wants to adopt her, just in time for the third act complication. Despite Annie's presence, Stax has plateaued in the polls, and his opponent has Michael J. Fox stumping for him, so desperate times. And since Guy is in the business of getting rotten assholes elected, well, that explains Donald Trump, he wants to up the ante by reuniting Annie with her parents. To do that, he enlists the aid of Miss Hannigan via sin number 7, Easy Street.
So this is our chance to get out of this place. So come on, let's run for it. Easy Street.
Wow, way to ruin my favorite song in the entire Score movie. On top of yet more awkward meta-humor, this scene jumps between the dialogue and the song and dance in a weird and pointless way.
If Stax reunites Annie with her parents, 80% surge in the polls for sure.
We talked about this already. They don't exist.
We'll make them exist.
And finally, the song is a lead-in to sin number 8. Very little about the way the whole Annie's parents scheme plays out makes sense. First, why does Guy even need Hannigan's help? In the original, Hannigan secretly had the other half of Annie's orphan locket because her real parents had died in a fire, but that doesn't happen here. In fact, we never do find out where Annie's real parents are. Are they dead? Do they plan to come back for her at all? Doesn't she and the audience deserve some kind of closure on the subject? Theoretically, Guy needs Hannigan to recruit a couple to pretend to be Annie's mom and dad, but that goes about as well as you'd expect.
The sun will come out pronto. That your sweet bottom fella, that pronto.
So Guy goes out himself and hires vaguely Jesse L. Martin and Joanne from the Rent movie for the job, and they have the orphan locket and a DNA test and a convenient, "oh, we're moving to Brazil for work soon" alibi. Hannigan, who for reasons never made convincing is starting to have reservations about this whole thing, asks Guy what his secret is, and Guy, being an idiot villain in an idiot movie, can't resist a little gloating.
How did you do the DNA test?
You can do anything with money.
Well, who are those people? What's your plan with her anyhow?
Don't worry about it. She served her purpose.
What does that mean?
That they'll hold her for a while, then dump her back in the system till after the election. No harm, no foul.
Right. First, you're going to have to try harder than we threw money at the problem for a plot point. Second, Guy, I don't think you've thought this through. You've made Annie into a minor celebrity. Don't you think people are going to notice when she's just randomly dumped back into foster care? How do you think Will Stax casts foster child off onto fake parents is going to look on his reputation? Or yours? You're stupid for thinking this could work, and the writers are stupid for thinking the audience will buy it. Indeed, it never even makes it to that point, since a change-of-hearted Hannigan spills the beans like the obvious liability she's been all along, and Annie wises up to the ruse and trades on her internet famous to leave a trail of virtual breadcrumbs behind her. See, kids, having telecommunications companies track your every move is a good thing!
Posted on the George Washington Bridge.
She's waving. She's doing it on purpose.
Head uptown, Gil.
After a protracted chase scene set to quasi-action versions of the major songs, all ends as it should. Stax tells Annie he really cares for her and drops out of the mayoral race to prove it. Grace punches Guy and gets asked out on a date by Stax. Hannigan gets paired up with dogged nice bodega owner as her reward for coming over to the good guy's side. Song and dance finales all around.
Keep singing and dancing like that, there's no way he was ever gonna win.
Oh, for fuck! I think you could make a good modern version of Annie. Here, you could make a good modern version of Annie with Jamie Foxx and Quvenzhané Wallis. There's nothing wrong with their performances that couldn't be fixed with better writing and overall handling of the material. This is obviously not that version. It's ironic that the main antagonist is a focus group-driven, trend-chasing publicist, because that embodies the spirit of this movie more than anything else. It's calculated, artificial, and wants to impress you with how cool it is, but just proves how much it's trying to condescend to what it thinks you'll like. Which is why the Court of Musical Hell orders the following punishments. For her awful attempt at creating an over-the-top villain, we condemn Cameron Diaz to an extended stay at the Thénardiers Inn. For so desperately trying to be cool, we condemn the writers to be returned to the social hell that is middle school. Finally, for creating an Annie that has no heart, we condemn the producers to be special guests at the Temple of Kali Ma. So let it be recorded. This session of the Infernal Court in Musical Hell is now adjourned.